Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Brianna Maitland? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. So first I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the disappearance, then offer my analysis. Brianna Maitland was born in Burlington, Vermont on October 8, 1986. She was raised on a farm in East Franklin, Vermont by her father Bruce and her mother Kelly. Brianna had one older brother. Right when she turned 17, Brianna decided she wanted to move away from her home. It wasn't that she was having any serious issues with her parents, rather she just wanted to be closer to her friends and be more independent. Brianna enrolled at a high school that was about 15 miles away. This was the same school that her friends attended. She lived in the homes of different friends, including 2 different boyfriends. It seems as though she just couldn't get settled in. Brianna dropped out of high school in February of 2004. She moved to Sheldon, Vermont, and lived with a close friend named Jillian Stout. Around the same time she moved to Sheldon, Brianna was attacked at a party. The assailant was a former friend of hers named Keely LaCrosse. Brianna had extensive training in martial arts, specifically jiu-jitsu, but refused to engage in the fight. She let LaCrosse strike her several times as Brianna remained seated in a truck. Brianna was treated at a local hospital for a broken nose, concussion, 2 black eyes, and cuts on her face. Brianna would later file charges against LaCrosse, but they were dropped after Brianna disappeared. A combination of romance and geometry may have been to blame, namely a love triangle. Brianna and LaCrosse were interested in the same young man. Now moving to the timeline of the disappearance. On March 19, 2004, Brianna took her GED exam. Her father was in New York at this time, but her mother Kelly was around in the area. After the exam, Brianna went to lunch with Kelly to celebrate. Kelly indicated that her daughter was in a good mood that day. Brianna had talked about going to college. When lunch was over, Brianna and Kelly spent the afternoon together. They ran errands and went shopping. They were waiting in line to purchase items at a store when something outside caught Brianna's attention, like she was looking through the window of the store and saw something. She left the store as if to investigate, telling her mother she would be right back. Kelly finished buying the items, exited the store, and encountered Brianna waiting at their vehicle. Brianna seemed agitated, shaken, and uneasy. There was no one else around, and Brianna did not have a bag from another store. It's not clear what she did after she left the store. That evening, Brianna was working at a restaurant on Main Street in Montgomery, Vermont, called the Black Lantern Inn. She was a dishwasher there. Brianna told her mother that she needed to go home to get ready for work. Kelly dropped Brianna off at Brianna's residence sometime between 3:30 and 4 p.m. This would be the last time Kelly would see her daughter. Brianna left a note for Jillian indicating she would come back to the residence after finishing work. After this, Brianna drove a 1985 Oldsmobile 88 Royale to the Black Lantern Inn. The vehicle was registered to her mother, but Brianna regularly used it. During her shift, coworkers did not notice Brianna on the phone. No visitors stopped by. Brianna finished her shift at 11:20 p.m. Her coworkers asked if she wanted to have dinner with them, but she declined the invitation, saying she needed to go home and rest because she was working at her second job the next day. This job was at a diner in St. Albans, Vermont. Her coworkers indicated that she was alone in her vehicle when she drove away from the restaurant. The next afternoon, the Oldsmobile was found in the town of Richford at a place that was called the Old Dutchburn House. This is about a mile from the restaurant. The rear of the vehicle had penetrated the siding of the house. There was a piece of plywood on the trunk of the car. The plywood had been covering a window of the house. It looked as though the car had knocked the plywood off, as opposed to somebody ripping the plywood off of the window. A Vermont state trooper investigated after receiving a call about the vehicle. The vehicle was unlocked, but the keys were missing. The trooper found a water bottle, an unsmoked cigarette, and loose change around the outside of the Oldsmobile. Inside the car, there were 2 of Brianna's paychecks, totaling about $150. It did not look as though the vehicle had crashed after traveling off the road in an uncontrolled manner, rather as though somebody deliberately backed into the house. So it wasn't a situation where the car spun out on the road and hit the house. Rather, Brianna must have parked there and then backed into it. The rear of the vehicle was pushed up onto the foundation of the house. The back wheels were actually lifted off the ground. The car was disabled. The trooper figured that a drunk driver abandoned the vehicle. It was towed to a local garage. Nobody realized that Brianna was missing at this time. Kelly did not know that the Oldsmobile had been discovered abandoned. Jillian didn't realize Brianna was missing either. She found the note Brianna left on March 19, but just assumed that Brianna found some other place to stay. On March 23, Kelly started calling people to find out where Brianna was. Nobody she called had seen or spoken to Brianna. She filed a missing person report that same day. 2 days later, the Vermont State Police showed Kelly a picture of the Oldsmobile found in Richford. Kelly recognized the vehicle as the one Brianna was driving, but she did not believe Brianna would have left it in that condition. The police started investigating Brianna's disappearance. They cleared the woman who attacked Brianna, Keely LaCrosse, of any involvement. Several witnesses came forward and reported that they saw the Oldsmobile at the old Dutchburn house on the night Brianna disappeared. One man drove by the house between 11:30 p.m. on March 19 and 12:30 a.m. on March 20. He didn't see anyone in or near the vehicle. He said the headlights may have been on. Another man drove by on March 20 between midnight and 12:30 a.m. He said a turn signal was blinking on the vehicle. A former boyfriend of Brianna's drove by the house between 2:30 a.m. and 4 a.m. on March 20. He didn't see anybody around, but he did see the vehicle. He told a few different stories. That's why the time range is so extended. A few hours later, people who were driving by stopped and took pictures of the vehicle, thinking that a vehicle backed through a house looked out of place. If evidence of bad driving was interesting enough to cause them to take pictures, it's a good thing they weren't visiting New Jersey. They would have taken so many pictures their cameras would have melted. The police initially thought that Brianna may have just run away. They didn't think that anyone else was involved. They searched the old Dutchburn house and found nothing. The Oldsmobile was processed by the police. There was no sign of a struggle in the vehicle. Investigators indicated they recovered DNA from the Oldsmobile, but they did not reveal the results of any tests. It appears as though they're still trying to match that DNA to a suspect. A few items belonging to Brianna were still inside, including her eyeglasses, contact lens case, medication for migraine headaches, her driver's license, makeup, clothing, and an ATM card. The police changed their minds and decided that foul play was involved. Interestingly, about a month before Brianna disappeared, a woman named Mara Murray disappeared while driving in New Hampshire. This was only about 90 miles away. Law enforcement did not think these two cases were related. An anonymous tip came in saying that Brianna was being held against her will in a house located in Berkshire, Vermont. The house was rented by two known drug dealers named Ramon Ryans and Nathaniel Jackson. The police raided the house on April 15, 2004. They found plenty of drugs and arrested both men. They did not find Brianna. The police would later find out that Brianna had contact with both of the men as recently as 1 week before she disappeared. Brianna had experimented with crack cocaine and other drugs. Another anonymous tip came in late 2004. This one said that Ryans and Jackson were involved in Brianna's disappearance and murder. The police cannot find evidence to support this claim. There were additional anonymous tips that also went nowhere. In July of 2016, the old Dutchburn house caught fire and was destroyed, living up to the burn component of Dutchburn. If the house had been named Dutch Fire Resistant, perhaps the outcome would have been different. Now moving to my analysis. Let's take a look at the theories about what could have happened in this case. Theory number 1. Brianna simply ran away to start a new life. No foul play was involved. She had a history of running away and had mentioned plans to take a short trip out of the area. The problem here is that starting a new life is very difficult to do. she would have needed help. She was in a rural area. It was very cold that night. She didn't drive the car into the house and then simply walk away. Briana was also looking forward to going to college. Theory number 2, Briana brought an end to her own life in such a way where her body was never found. This is supported by her leaving certain personal items behind, like her eyeglasses and medication. However, this theory runs into many of the same problems that we see with theory number 1. How did she get away from the area without help? Theory number 3, Briana was targeted randomly by some killer. The timeline makes this theory challenging. She left work at 11:20 p.m., and her vehicle was spotted sometime between 11:30 p.m. and 12:30 a.m. It seems likely that Briana drove directly from her place of employment to the house where her vehicle was found. There really wasn't enough time for a killer to intercept her unless that killer was waiting in the backseat of her car, or she picked up the killer between the restaurant and the house, like the killer was hitchhiking. This is possible but unlikely. Theory number 4, Briana was attacked by one or more assailants who were known to her, perhaps as part of a drug deal gone bad or some type of romance-based disagreement. This theory is supported by a few different items. Briana was known to use substances. She had been in a fight with an acquaintance, had relationships with drug dealers, had a volatile romantic life, and was agitated and upset earlier that day. This theme of an unstable and erratic lifestyle emerges, which is consistent with getting involved with the wrong group of people and making other poor decisions. Considering all the evidence, which theory is most probable? I think theory number 4 is the most probable. Somebody murdered her after some type of disagreement. It was probably somebody that she met at or near that house. When the encounter became heated, she threw the car in reverse, but not being an experienced driver, she drove it into the house. The rear of the vehicle lifted up onto the foundation, and she was unable to escape. Somebody took her from the area and killed her at another location. Some have suggested that there must have been multiple attackers because Briana had studied jiu-jitsu for a few years. The largest predictor of hand-to-hand combat performance is body weight. She was only 110 pounds. No amount of technique was going to allow her to defeat a male weighing, say, somewhere between 170 or 200 pounds. Perhaps Briana did not resist her attacker at all. We know that she demonstrated a degree of passivity just a few weeks before when she let an acquaintance break her nose without retaliating. In addition, the assailant may have threatened Briana with a weapon. After this theory, I would go with theory number 2. She brought an end to her own life. Theory number 3, killed by a stranger. Then theory number 1, she started a new life. What lessons can we learn in this case? Briana had a lot of instability in her life, but clearly she was trying to make progress. She had a lot to look forward to. It seems likely that somewhere out there is a killer, or perhaps more than one killer, who managed to destroy Briana's life without penalty. Nobody saw them, and if they left DNA behind, it has not yet been identified. This was probably an impulsive and emotionally driven crime, where somehow the investigation failed to identify people that should have been fairly easy to catch. Drugs, alcohol, physical violence, and romantic drama are each dangerous alone, but in combination, they become particularly pernicious. Those are my thoughts in the case of Brianna Maitland. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.